everybody else can listen.
Perfect. All right. Well, hello, we're conversing and nobody looks silly.
Good to finally meet you.
Yeah. So I haven't looked too much kind of at what you do and what's going on over there, but it seems like you're basically trying to get kids to be healthy.
Pretty
right?
much.
In that, and be active, and you're using kind of yoga as that vehicle.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
Cool.
And tied in with it is our affinity for the natural world, which is yoga-esque. Body awareness, especially with kids. Yeah, and just wholeness and wellness, truly.
Cool. So I feel like we do the same thing. I think you just use the moniker of yoga, and I would rather use like blank, right? Like it is whatever you like. Play. It is whatever you want it to be. So cool. I'm just glad we kind of got that kind of out the way to be like, yeah, we are literally the same. So I don't know if there's a set amount of questions, or you just want to converse, or.
I have a few things that I've been wanting to ask.
Okay.
Oh, look, I have some people over here. That's great. Okay. It doesn't matter. Either way. So, are you in Oregon?
I am.
Currently.
State capital.
Portland.
Salem. So about an hour south. I'm not cool or hip enough for Portland, nor do I want to pay their property taxes and housing costs. So Salem is moderate. Salem's where I'm at.
Nice. We were in Oregon in 2015, and we seriously loved it. Yeah. I just loved it. We went camping at Oxbow.
Okay. I know where that is. It's east of Portland on 84.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was fantastic. I loved every minute of it. So I'm glad that you're there. How has school or lack of school been for you?
Well, it causes you to reconfigure things and to really think about what it is you're doing and how you're putting it out in the world, right? I mean, as PE, the general tradition is, we all get into a big giant space and we play stuff together. Like that's the general sense. And now when we can't get into that space and we can't even be synchronous because of kids' schedules, you have to find different ways of trying to communicate some sort of learning, or even, as you put, understanding and awareness. So, my question was always, now that we don't have school, like, do you do nothing? Like, what? No judgment, just like, what are your days like? These are the first questions that came out of my mind, is like, now that your structure that you were used to and somewhat agreed to is gone, what is your normalcy? Like, did it go completely? Which I think it did. I think it went completely like, this is great, I sleep in all the time, and this. And so, okay, they realize that sleep's important, right? Like and that they feel different without it. And maybe they don't need to get Dutch Brothers every day if they allow themselves a certain amount of sleep. So it's definitely a more conceptual, I'm going to toss you some kind of thing to pay attention to, and then I'm going to ask you questions, and I'm going to have you respond to me. That's kind of how it's been. And I know a lot of PE teachers are especially in my district, are very up in the air about, like, what are we going to do about this now? What are we going to do? Like, they can't dress down. They can't do this. We have half as many kids, and it's like, we have to adapt. And like, there's this panic. And I understand, because we are used to what we are used to, but I feel like that's the role of an educator, is to be able to adjust things. And maybe that's naive on my part, but I mean, I don't know how many times I've walked in a gym class and the gym is taken. Like, oh, the gym is gone. Okay, like, and this is the life of a PE teacher. So I mean, it's probably not the same in other subjects, but I think also what you're asked to do is not the same either. So mostly Google Classroom. That's how we are getting through to kids.
Right. And it's only a small percent, and it's working a little bit?
So it was kind of weird, if we talked about last year. So there was all this like, okay, we need to give them a gap. So we would give them light things to keep the learning going for the 2 weeks. And then when school ended, it was like, oh no, like we need to do this for the rest of the year. So the seniors, they were like, seniors are done. So all the seniors are like, we're out. And I was like, totally get it. So when you think of that, my upperclassmen seniors were about 25 to 30% of my classes. They all went. And then the lower classmen, what happened was is they basically gradually dropped off. They were like, there's this new thing, but to do it for 9 weeks and to be like, oh, it's pass fail. Why am I, all these things came up that I agree with it. That really had them question why they were doing anything if there isn't going to be a penalty for not doing it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, my goodness. Wow.
Which leads us into like this upcoming, question. Right now we're set to go a split, some in class, some hybrid, but I look around and the county that we're in, and particularly that community, is like on the up for testings. And so all the teachers are like, we're really not comfortable with this. And the kids are probably similar, but I get like, and this is, probably your population too. I get, and I fully understand, I can't say understand and relate, but I get how a parent who is used to their kid going to school could very much be losing their mind right now. Right? I completely get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like having to work, and even the teachers and the teachers who have kids who are in these Zooms and they're in and out, and like you see the looks off camera. I live by myself. So it's this thing of like, okay, I have more time and more energy to do other things. But yeah, I get where parents are coming from. Even a day, right? If you think of a good friend, like you want to be with your good friend for, an hour or two, but you don't want to live with them and you don't want to like take care of them. Like there's a whole lot that's wrapped up in this that goes well beyond PE and well beyond school. It's like, who's raising the kids?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yes. Everything has come up. Every tiny little thing has come up. Okay. Tell me about your work pre-COVID-19 and just so you were all day in the classroom.
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, I got switched from health PE at the high school level to just PE. So that's when I really was like, well, if this is what I'm going to do, like I'm really going to go hard at it. Because, when you're doing classroom, when you mix, you're split attentions. But when all I was going to do is PE, I was like, I think we can do this differently. And again, perhaps confidently, I think I could plug the gap. Because as a high school PE teacher, as teachers and kids alone, there are basically two tracks. There are, I'm going to play sports, or I'm going to work out. That's the two options, right? But we have 3 PE courses. So it was like, okay, what about all the other stuff? What about like acrobats, hand balancing? What about the awareness piece and the learning your body and to be sensitive to your body? Like all this stuff kind of got missing in the attention going in those places. So I started to build that in, and it's funny that you're a yoga person, because in my first year of doing this, I was known as the yoga class or the sleeping class, and that's because my way to go about things was I'm not going to do any lifting, and I'm not going to do any sports. Like those 2 guys. I'm only going to do this other stuff. So we just made up stuff all the time. And what came from that was like, well, gosh, I feel like I'm offering an option, but I'm also leaving out the good stuff of the other 2 sections, the team play, the game building, the ability to incorporate performance and fitness into your stuff. So now we're this big mixture, and I look at what the kids like, and I toss them other elements, and I weave it in like as if they're vegetables. So that's the general tract that I'm doing. And again, really saying, like, man, I really want these kids to understand their bodies. I want them to understand how to take care of themselves, because every little tiny thing that happens to them, I need to see the trainer, I need some ice. Like, ice is this magical thing where, like, this is going to make me, they don't want to learn how to open up. They don't want to learn why it happened. They just want the ice. And it was this thing where, like, oh, okay, so the bag of ice duct taped around your belly to tape your, oh, is a badge of honor. Oh, I got it. I got it. Now people around, now all the peers and all the other basketball folks and football folks being like, man, this guy really busted into practice today. So it made sense. It all made sense. So again, to try not to judge and just see what's going on and use what you see to kind of develop your offerings in a way that they can accept it.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Wow. It just reminds me, and I was going to ask you this later, like, I was just thinking back to my own physical education of all varieties growing up. And I swam competitively from when I was about 6 to 12. But I, like, very much compartmentalized it. Like, that was my thing. And I, you know, it was amazing. But I just, like, thoroughly despised phys ed. Like, don't.
Many do.
Yeah. And I just really, when I look back, I'm like, man, there's just so much opportunity there for all the things that I've learned since then. And yoga for me, I was like relentless because I was incredibly inflexible. I started my yoga practice when I was, 2007. And there were a bunch of things kind of in the way, but I was still drawn to yoga. But I cannot believe all that I've learned since then that I didn't learn when I was a kid. And that's a big part of Appleseed, that we give kids those foundations and not necessarily in this competitive sport-based environment. So I don't really remember where I was going with that. So yeah, I think just that there's like such opportunity, like it just didn't exist. And there's so many things back then that didn't exist that are being reformed and repackaged. But I really, like, I feel like you have your work cut out for you. Like, it's, I mean, as a teacher in general, but
yeah, I'm kind of like, why not? Why not me? Right? And, you know, I have this question asked, and like, well, okay, how do you let your method grow? And it's like, whoa, I'm not there. Like, I want to take care of first period during first period. And when second period comes, I'm going to take care of second period, right? Like, and you have to learn them, and you have to learn their tactics. But I think when you talk to, that's how most kids get into fitness, is they play a sport and they're good at a sport, right? And you think about, well, why as a kid, especially talking about specialization in youth, right? We're training these little kids as if they're professional players. And it's, you know, and you're taking a step back, and it's like, oh, you're like, oh, the parents, they're telling the parents that this is what's happening. Like, we're doing this ladder drill. And I'm like, this kid can't kick a ball. Like, just let him kick ball. Like, everything is just so flipped and backwards. And, you know, and I'm not sure why you got into swimming, other than you had an opportunity, you liked it, and you were probably pretty decent at it. There was some positive reinforcement. And when you get all those things, then your identity is, like, now I'm a swimmer, right? This is the thing about the pro sports people that doesn't come to light, is that there is going to be a time and a place when that sport ends, and you are no longer going to have that hour to train, that coach, those teammates, the competition 3 weeks from now. Then what? And then we wonder why people get out of stuff. Because again, they weren't taught how to practice on their own, how to train, what the point, they weren't asked these questions. They just did, like, really great machines. Athletes are tremendous robots. What people can do with their bodies these days, like training it wise, the Olympics, it's out of this world. But again, when you take the utopia out, people get a little lost. I used to have this joke with the kids about, you know, they all wanted weight loss. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, anyway, they're like, yeah, anyway, I'll do it. Like, all right, how about I lock you in that closet for 2 weeks? I bet you probably lose weight. And they were like, yeah. And then they're like, yeah, right? This idea where no control, no, like, oh, be careful what you wish for. You know what I mean? Without seeing the big, we only want the results. We want it, and we want it as fast as possible. We don't necessarily want to meander our way. We want to be given the path and given the answer. And just do this. Here's your workout. Do it. And that leads to so many issues because, again, it makes you reliant on someone giving you a workout.
And it's,
for you to feel accomplished.
It's. I mean, our system, our society, everything tells us that it's a subscription. It's a, you know, I need, even, you know, the whole, I mean, this is a whole other thing, but even in yoga, it's like, you know, trusting your teacher is trusting your own body, right? And so that's kind of what I try to drill home to our kids. You know, I talked to some of them today in our summer camp, talking about pain and what that is, and just what to be aware of, as opposed to, oh, if it's painful, don't stay away from it. Kind of.
Right. There is a continuum.
Yeah, exactly. So at Appleseed, talk a lot about it. This is kind of the thread pulling our Kids Wellness series together, which is kids are born with, well, in some ways, I mean, I say that they're born yogis, but on a broader level, they're just kind of born with this knowing and with this awareness and innate, these innate capabilities. And so through all the people that I've been talking to, yours lends itself really directly in the physical sense. And so babies come out and they're just doing yoga. Like, they're just doing yoga as babies all day. And one thing that we talk about is how we train ourselves out of that. I mean, parents do it, say yes, no, do this, don't do this, past experiences and histories, right? So what can you say around my question? Let me get very specific. So do you agree with that? How far does that go? And it doesn't have to be babies and young kids, but just in your experience with kids, how does that innate experience arrive? Like, is it preserved? Yeah. So do you agree with that? And then I guess it's more of the nature versus nurture. So, and I don't actually mean versus, because with everybody, I'm like, it's definitely always a little bit of both, right?
I'm with you. I got the gist.
But what can you speak to that? What can you say about that, or your experience with?
Okay. Yeah. So I think maybe stepping back from saying that kids come out doing yoga, they come out learning how to move. They come out figuring out how to do stuff. How do I pick my head up? How do I roll over? How do I crawl?
Yeah.
So, right. And there's this huge rapid, and it's like they kind of get to walking, and then walking is like, they did it. Like, now they're kind of a functional human, but then it's okay crawling over stuff, etc. So yes, that is all in our genetics. And what I think smushes that or pushes that back is the nature, the nurturing and the nature at the same time, because our nature is to do things with efficiency. Our nature is to make things easy because we want to survive. So if you think of a little kid and they look outside and they watch a jogger running, they don't understand why that guy is jogging for no reason. Like, he's going to end up where he started? Well, what's the point? Now, if a kid wants to get somewhere faster, they're going to jog or they're going to run. that makes sense to them. So it's this, there's this kind of that exercise is this made up thing because our lives do not need movement in them in order to get by. Like we can literally, especially in this day and age, I can sit on my couch and Amazon can do this and then I can get food delivered and I could never interact, So, I take the kids outside and it's like, I know we're in Oregon, but it's like 10 minutes of like, right? And they're and it's just like, if you sit through the discomfort a little bit, your eyes will adjust. But I think that is the bigger push, is that we lose. Again, all a baby's doing is struggling and figuring out, like, that's all they're doing. And as parents and as the environment that kids are put in, what we try to do is stop the struggle because we want things to be good, right? So the absence of that struggle is what makes people soft and confined and less resilient. They're not adaptable. So they get adaptable into this rutted state. And because comfort led them there, discomfort is something they don't want. It isn't something that they're curious about anymore. They don't want it. So again, they remove themselves and again, doing as little as possible because it makes sense. And it's funny because we actually had a great, I'll put it in my bio after this. We had a great PE call yesterday with some Think movement people. And there was a response saying like, well, what do we do with these kids, without a frontal lobe and who have overdextrous thumbs? And my response is like, they didn't do these to themselves. Like this isn't this natural evolution, right? Like we did this to them. And then you have the parent who, gets berated or feels guilty that they give their kid a cell phone, right? And again, the parent, that same efficiency, I need 10 minutes, please go away, entertain yourselves. Where this phone isn't risky. It isn't, again, we used to go out in the neighborhood, and now if you let your kids run free, you're a bad parent. So I can't, right? I cannot speak on parenting. I can only speak on the things I hear and see about the judgment of parenting, which I feel, again, is ill-conceived because everybody's living in this utopia of shoulds and shouldn't. Nobody's really looking at what is. Like we need to look at what is and stop judging and say, okay, how can we go from what is and make a uptick step in the direction we want them to go?
Yes. One step.
That's, I feel, where, the people in this fight are doing that work.
Right. It's hard. It's so true. I see it and I feel it every day. And I'm so adamant there is no screens in the morning. And it's
a fight.
Else. It's a fight, but honestly, like when the lockdown happened, we were doing fine, and then stuff gets chippy, cranky, tricky, and there was a day where our boys were in front of the TV for maybe like 3 hours, maybe even a bit longer, and it was probably 5 times worse because when we had to turn off the TV, it was just crying and uncomfortableness for 3 more hours.
Right.
So our strategy is the longer in the day we can go with 0 screens, the much and more outside, of course, the much happier we are. So, lots.
Yeah, you have to pick and choose your battles.
Yeah.
Right? And again, I look at it as an adult, and if there are days as an adult where I just want to like lounge on the couch and like watch Mad Men for like 6 episodes, absolutely. And is that healthy as a health person? Well, it's what I decided to do at the time. Yeah. Right? No, it isn't. And again, it isn't an everyday thing, but it's the same. Again, I feel like we don't give kids enough credit in that they know what they need.
Yeah.
Because again, we're coming from, I know better, I know what you need kind of thing. But again, if you just bring them in on the process, or you know, what's on your phone that we can't do here? What's on your phone that you can't do outside? I mean, the stimulation and attention that phones give people is astronomical, right? Like I could just play this thing and have fun all day long. And again, as a child, that's what they're after. So, and even and I imagine, like, as a person with, like, as I'm assuming your business is mostly online
right now, yeah.
So in that aspect, right, like you're trying to model that behavior best as possible, right? Exactly. By saying you can't, we can't, but then there's times you got to get on, and they're like, well, you're on, right? Like, and they probably don't understand the difference there, and it's the same, right? Like, as a parent, and again, utopia. Just imagining, because I do not have kids. That is not my wheelhouse at all. I'm the person that will play with them for an hour or two straight up, and then I can tell you all their tendencies. But, right, if you're going to tell your kid to be off their phone for a certain amount of time, you also have to be willing to be off your phone, right? And that's why I think it's a twofold thing, because the parent doesn't want to, right? And they also don't want it comes off to the child as hypocritical, which I can understand.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you're saying no, but you're on it all the time, and you're laughing. Well, I also want to laugh. The other thing is, the poor kid's probably like, will you pay attention to me?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's all they're after. Like, this phone will interact with them. But it is energy draining to interact with children. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I work with high schoolers, you know, which probably the emotional roller coasters that I go on is much bigger than physically. But the demands after teaching PE 6 hours straight are almost incapacitating, just like in my office. So I can imagine coming home, doing that, or something that focused mentally and sustaining, then having to go home to a child who wants to play with me. Like, there'd be no way. It's like I have a cat, and my cat annoys me. I just toss her outside. I can't do that with a child, kind of thing. So I understand, and I feel for the conundrum, and this is why I will never judge. But if asked, I will certainly be like, well, what about this? And what about this? You know, non-judgmental suggestions that might, again, take the tip or take the step in the direction hopefully all of you want to go.
Totally. Okay. Oh, can you tell us about your movement development homeschool endeavor?
Oh, yeah. So this is really cool. One of these things that, again, COVID and situation threw me into, I got a call from an old client of mine, and he had a grandson that used to see a physical therapist up in Portland, but the son is here the grandson is here for the summer. And they were like, well, he can't see his physical therapist, and he's 7 years old. So he was like, hey, do you work with kids? I was like, absolutely. So instead of this like sterile, therapist office, we work on the deficiencies through play.
Amazing.
Right? So it is. And I was just like, wow, I really think, especially nowadays when parents would just be like, please come to my house, give me an hour. Absolutely. So, but it's such a beautiful marriage between the play and the underlying and the tossing out and interplaying with the 7-year-old. Like, hey, do you like this? Is this, and to not make assumptions. And it's really interesting in that we've been at it this is our 3rd week now. And to see him like kind of test the boundaries of things. And I'm like, man, you're getting water a lot more than before. And like, you got to ask your grandma questions. And it was almost kind of, I literally, instead of just judging this kid, I was just like, are you having fun? Is this cool for you? And he said to me, he's like, sometimes it's too hard. Sometimes I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm not necessarily a set rep person. I was like, do this for 10. I would simply be like, hey, can you put this ball over your head? Right? And I see and I adjust. And if it's too difficult, give them something else to put. All right. So now can you hold it over your head? Can you go over this hurdle? What about if you can do it blindfolded? So I can kind of see in his perspective, and this is where the interplay, because I work for him. I work for my students. Like, there's no doubt about it that this is his domain and I'm the guest. And I have to link up and sync up with him into figuring out what is it that he likes. And what he likes tends to change from day to day, kind of like everybody else. So to really hone in on what is this person ready for and how do I include them in the process of making obstacles and challenges? Like, how do we get this practice? What is it that I see him liking? And then how do I, for example, add hip flexion to that, or add pushing through his feet, which he skipped crawling. So there's been a lot of skip steps. So we have to regress, but it's one of these things. He doesn't like being on the ground. So you have to kind of figure out what tools, what to do and when to do them and how long to do them. So it's really just this like antenna, like, here's an idea, how is he relating it? And then when I hear him say like, oh, can we do this? The answer is like, yes, like, let's do it. And so then he gets the baton, goes through it till there's a challenge. I see how long he stays stumped and if he wants to switch or change. So yeah, I mean, it's just a very cool process of communicating and listening to someone who can't really communicate to you what they're feeling, or maybe they think it's wrong to say, I don't want to do this anymore. Because as a child, they're knowing that they're supposed to have a session. They don't necessarily get up and leave, right? Like, it's the same with PE. Like they've got to be there. They have to be there whether they want to be there or not, because it's required by the school. So if that is such a thing, like, how do you make it an enjoyable experience where I don't have the keys all the time? Where I can toss the keys and like, let's go. What do you want to do? Right? So again, it's back and forth. And that, I mean, again, that's one person, one kid. So imagine doing that with a group of 45, 6 periods a day, and you can learn to lump and group and everything real quick. So it's really an art in reading people and human behavior, because all the knowledge in the world that you have, all the best drills that you can imagine, mean absolutely zero if this kid or person or being isn't interested in them, and you can't make it interesting, right? It's out in the garbage.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. I feel like we've touched on everything. Okay, and I know that you work more with high schoolers. Mm-hmm. I don't know how young I guess you're working with a 7-year-old, which is clearly a lot younger than high school. So what are some ways that our community, the Appleseed community, our parents that are open to coming to specifically yoga or just want their kid moving in a non-competitive way, what are some ways that we can just practically preserve their natural movements, their innate movements? And we kind of touched on it a bit, but I'm curious to see what you'll say.
I would say get them doing as much or as many different things as possible, right? And I understand also the discourse there, right? So kids being able to get on their hands or crawl. A parent might not be able to do that, so it might be difficult to model. But like, could you put, bean bags or paper plates on the floor, Twister-esque, and have them, right, balance that pattern? Same thing for going upside down. I mean, the spatial awareness. The other thing that's really shifting with kids, and we talked about it with the sunlight, but their vision, because their vision, since yay high, has been so narrow, they're losing peripheral vision. So to simply put a card, like a playing card on the wall right in front of them, have them look at that, and then outside his range of vision or her range of vision, see ask him to tell you, how many fingers do you see? So they can start building there's a billion types of games you can make up, but the suggestion of the game cannot trump the situation. It cannot trump the parent's energy and ability. And it cannot, maybe the kid isn't very able-bodied, right? You can't just toss. So it's the ability to adapt things on the fly, which makes it an interactive event, which is what anything interactive, even if they're on their phone and you're upset, to ask them questions about what's happening on their phone. Like, what's happening? right? Just to engage there. And why do you like it? Like, what's cool about it? Again, to give them attention. You're not necessarily praising the phone, but you're giving an interest in what they like. And so it may not be the first day that you'll be like, I have a game from this, but as you do it over time, you'll start to get pieces of what it is. And play movement sessions don't have to be thought of like as adult blocks of time. Time is this weird adult notion where starts at 6, ends at 7. You got to get through to be successful. It could literally be just walking down the hallway with them, right? Having them go under your arm. It's like, literally, that's it. Having them see if they can climb up your body. Like, moments at a time. You see them on the ground. Like, can you give them something? Can you engage them on the ground at all? Right? These are all, I mean, mirroring is huge. Like, can you do what I do? Is excellent. Kids love balls of any sort. So dribbling the ball, kicking the ball, throwing the ball, blocking the ball, catching the ball. And again, it doesn't have to look like anything. Let it be what it is. Like, that's the advice. Let it be what it is and build from there. And then there's no frustration and no fight, right? Because you simply, oh, okay, this is what it is.
Yes. And yeah, and especially when they're young, like I have a 3.5 and a 6-year-old. And my 6-year-old, the oldest, of course, I felt like I needed to have more control. And the 3.5-year-old, I literally have never really said no. I mean, unless he was in direct danger. But, and I mean, I think naturally they're able in different ways, of course. But it's quite interesting, quite interesting to see the difference. But I think that's it. And it's hard. Like, I kind of have built this into my livelihood, letting them be. Mm-hmm. And yet it's like my daily struggle.
Right. Well, what is it about the 6-year-old that makes you want to hone in more, just because they can do more things and you don't want them to get hurt?
No, it's just because he's the oldest. And as the oldest, it's like, I think I can control things more, or I want him to follow X, Y, Z. Like, there's expectation and there's, so it's.
And I almost want it, like, and you said it, that idea of expectation, and that, you know, the first one don't want to screw it up, while the 3-year-old just like, this is the time of my life. So is there, right? Even if you were like 5, could you peel back the expectation? Like, tomorrow, when you first feel that thing, could you peel it back for 5 minutes and simply just, you don't even need to talk to him, just simply watch and see what happens. Right? Does he look at you and, like, keep pushing? And again, just observe. And see where it goes, to see, okay, like, maybe my worst nightmare isn't a for sure thing.
Right.
And again, it's just like, you give him a little piece, give him a little piece, give him a little piece of rope.
Yeah.
And I think Bar Running is at the bottom here. He's giving a suggestion, you know, the ball, a balloon. Right? This idea, this lightweight thing, how many things you can do with a balloon, you know, sticking on top of your head, bouncing off body parts. It's quiet. It's like 2 minutes. So that, multiple at a time, can you keep them all up in the air? What about your feet? Oh my God, right? So it could become anything you want it to be. You don't need to buy fancy things. And that's like, this is where consumerism comes in. You know, you buy the kid the fancy toy and all he wants is the box.
Yeah.
Right? Because the box is possibility.
Yeah.
The toy, how many times have you said, no, you're supposed to do it like this? But the kid's like, this is my toy, right? I can do whatever I want with it. So that's what we have to stop stifling. Is like, this way, this is what we're supposed to do. That's not what you're supposed to do. And of course, danger aside. But if we don't give them any chance or opportunities to get a little risky, how will they notice their boundaries unless you're over their shoulder?
I mean, for sure, there's so much out there about risky play and how incredibly important it is and how it basically doesn't really exist anymore. You know, for the most part in mainstream culture. But it's, I let my boys do what they want, but there is always that voice because of how I was raised and the things that I was taught is of like, that's wrong, you're a bad parent, right? And so it's a lot of it is just breaking down those preconceptions.
Right? It's looking at ourselves, right? And I mean, the generation back were like, you know, I got spanked, I got beat, I sure learned not to do it. But nowadays, don't you dare, right? I'm definitely not condoning it, but it's this like, yes, no, right, wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, how could you relay that this is very dangerous, right? You're gonna put the fear of God in them forever and ever. So now they carry this trauma with them. Like, it's very tricky, but I don't think there are right and wrong answers. There's just how do you adjust to what is? How do you react and interact with it?
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's a delicate art, and it isn't. You know, I read a book. The book tells me what to do. I do that. I'm good. That's not life.
No. It's so true, and there's so many layers, and it's so unbelievably. Parenting is just reparenting yourself.
I believe it.
And letting it go, letting all of those big things. Oh, it's hard.
I can imagine. Again, as a person who takes care of themselves and being like, I don't think that was right. Like, going back in memories, like, what happened every Tuesday? Like, so most of this, I think that's the goal of the parent is to not pass down your stuff to them. And to almost let them figure it out in an unbiased way.
Yeah, like, oh, serious goals. It's really, really the key. It's the key. Thank you so much, Fran.
You're very welcome. Yeah, anytime. I really enjoyed this.
Yes. I'm so thankful. You had amazing insights. And yeah, I love even almost like class ideas for you that I can add. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Let's connect again and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you. Absolutely. Take care and thanks again for the offer.
Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.